Just a few heads up here. Lights all just turned on. Let there be light. I guess we're close to the equinox based on the sun's position. Every day I park in the same spot and I can see it incrementally adjusting itself towards the south. The alleged bottom of the ball. And look, this shape of the earth question has always been a misdirection. We always should have kept the focus on worldview. And the flatties never figured this out. I was like, I don't care about this crew going down to Antarctica. Their opinions have no relevance here because they believe the news is real. So what do I care about their cosmology? Just a few heads up. A few projects have been delayed, but they're in progress. The PSYOP trading cards, but it'll be worth the wait. The printer company that does the baseball cards, the trading cards, they have options. So I'm making a special edition Pope Elon. I want to get gold embossed, one of these nice, rare Pokemon style collectible cards, but I'm trying to work on this Pope Elon, which I'll include in addition to the numbers 25 to 36. So if you're waiting on 25 to 36, I'm going to add a Pope Elon to the mix. And I may even send out some of the leftovers from the first set, because I'm going to be doing a reprint. Now that I've had them all in hand and I've looked at them, I can see places where I want little adjustments here and there. But overall, we're still on course to have cards number 37 up to 48, probably late September, later in this month. And then again, before Halloween, we'll have another set. And I'm not going to say that's going to complete it, but I want to have a certain number before we start putting them into randomized sealed packages. I've been following the news pretty closely about the train stabbing. Was that North Carolina? And the rhetoric around it and how it's being framed. It's very interesting. Even Fox is getting in on it, finally, because Trump mentioned it. And it looks like what we're seeing here is this attempt to create a series of martyrs, like BLM, but this will be a WLM, like a White Lives Matter thing. A lot of rage bait. And it's pretty bifurcated as usual. You've got half saying, oh, this was done by mental illness. And the other half says it was done by or because of race. So it's pretty divided, although there are some moderates who will say it's because of the Democrat mayor or communism or some kind of statement, LBJ style. It's because of fatherless families or whatever. But is it real? Look, one of the conversations we had about this event was, you're considering things to be psyops, especially if they have a utility that's immediately obvious and implementable. But what we didn't see in this one, a couple of things to consider. Yeah, the victim being a Ukrainian refugee, another level there where it's like, okay. She also had a Black Lives Matter poster. So people are pointing out the irony in that, if you accept the implication that this was a racial thing. Although they released audio where he says, I got the white girl. So you have that. So I'm like, okay, maybe you can't exclude race from it. But whatever the case, is it real? Is it fake? Well, here's the thing. When I say fake until proven real, that's only if certain criteria are met. Like if it's extraordinary. Is that an extraordinary claim? I'm sorry. I wish it was. But getting stabbed to death on the subway is not that extraordinary. I can go sit down. I can give you the street corners here, where if I want to get shot by teenagers in a stolen car, I know where to sit. If I want to get stabbed by a gang member or shot in a drive-by, I know where to sit. Like, crime is ubiquitous. It's always existed. There's always those elements. But the framing of it seems very psyop-y. And then what's more, it's being considered in the context of previous psyops. Like, if only Daniel Penny were there. Or this is just like Austin Metcalf, and the media is ignoring it. So you have these different elements where, okay, this is obviously of interest, and it's being grafted onto a lot of the stuff that we know to be fake, psyops, influence ops. But in this case, the reason why I didn't jump to it's got to be fake is, one, the stabbing was back in August, like August 22nd. And I noticed that date, so I thought that's kind of interesting. You know, we enter Virgo, and you know, Virgo, Persephone goes into the underworld, Pluto takes her down. And the pattern we've seen over the years, Gabby Petito, for example, and others, has been this Virgo representative, the spring maiden going into the underworld as we enter the fall. And then, of course, King Ravana says, it's like a 14-piece puzzle, dude, killer on the subway. Well, he had 14 previous arrests. And I thought, you know, if I was writing this as a psyop, I would probably throw the number 14 in as it pertains to the 14 words that the far right are so fond of about protecting the white race. I mean, the whole thing seems perfectly scripted. But the reason why I didn't jump to fake is, one, it was back in August, and we just now got the footage. When it comes to a psyop, you get the footage like 5 minutes after. It's like, this just happened on the subway, and you're like, oh, that just happened 5 minutes ago? Like, how do we get the CCTV? Or before the blood's even dry, you would have had crisis actors. You remember the Frank James shooting, where he fired 33 rounds into the subway? Well, we don't have footage of it, because that was the one car that didn't have anything. My point here is that we didn't get the footage right away. There were no crisis actors or obvious embellishments from storytellers. There's no hearsay. The story wasn't promoted and blown up nationally. Because a lot of people are saying, why aren't we hearing about this? Why isn't the news talking about it? Well, because it's not a psyop. It was covered by the local news. The local mayor addressed it. If it's a psychological operation, you're going to have the echo chamber nationally. Everybody's blasting it 24/7. And this did not fit that pattern. This did not fit the pattern of being instantly blasted everywhere so you couldn't possibly miss it. No, this was put out on social media long after the fact. And now we have Musk hyping it up and bringing up similar ones, but running with the premise that this was a racial thing, which, of course, the killer, in his own words, makes it sound like it. So then the question is, well, what's the deal here? What is going on? I mean, I'm interested in people's take on it. As far as what we actually see, I didn't see any hoax indicators. It's like a scene out of a horror movie. Is it possible? You can say, oh, it's all just AI. Well, no. But you know what we did get, which is very interesting in the context of is it staged, is we've got dozens of pictures of the girl, like a young model. We've got a broader backstory. She's got a GoFundMe for the family, I guess. And then you have this narrative that she would have been better off at the front lines in Ukraine, risking getting nuked by Putin, than surviving an American subway. So it's an interesting story, but it's blowing up, which is why I'm even talking about it. It's blowing up, but I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know if this has the, I mean, yeah, it outrages a lot of people, but like, I don't know. It just seems like, even with Musk hyping it, it's only fuel for the woke right. Everyone else is just able to conveniently ignore it. Like systemic issues, socioeconomic. But looking into it, I am finding a lot of interesting statistics and misconceptions. And so that's worth looking at as well. Like, I'm very cautious about some of the people who are throwing around stats and statistics when these things have been reduced to mere slogans. You know, Bill Gates was photoed with that book. It was like How to Lie with Statistics. But anyway, most political rhetoric these days is just see what sticks, throw it all. No accountability for wrong answers. You never see somebody with a misleading tweet that gets a lot of hits deleting it suddenly. Copaesthetic says woke right retaliation psyop incoming. Well, if we look at this in context, ever since Sinners came out, there's been this back and forth, back and forth. People are, and the memes I'm looking at, like you got one, it's got Shiloh Hendrix on one side, and it's got the subway victim on the other. And it's just showing like how, look, being a racist saved her life. So you have a lot of avowed racists just kind of out of the woodworks, just jumping on it. But the racism exists, I want to be clear here, on the woke right, yeah, but it's also on the woke left. But their racism is directed against whites. So it is there. Andrea says, you're right, Tim. I had a relative get shot in his home by 3 people going door to door looking for open doors at 2 a.m. It went through his arm. He was fine, but it didn't make the news. Yeah, real events don't make the news. Like, I think it's shocking here that in less than a few months apart, there were 2 different groups of minors murdering homeless people, like thrill killing. Like, that's a big story in my view. Because these are places I know, like trails I walk by and bus stops I drive by. And it's like, wow, you can't even sit there. And these aren't crimes that make any sense. Like, they're not after your phone, your wallet. No, they want your blood. Like, what the hell is that? King Ravana says, I had a relative shot in handcuffs by 3 cops. Well, they have to handcuff you. That's kind of crazy, too, to think that if you get shot and then you get handcuffed after. I feel bad. I don't feel bad, but it's terrible for these criminals who you get shot by the cops and then they cuff you. When I worked for the OMI as a decedent transporter, I had to bag people sometimes whose hands were cuffed. Very awkward. Lean Dion says, underreported, very selective, or ignored if real. Exactly. And then with the hallmarks of a PSYOP, it's always narrative first. So, for example, Raja Jackson, who has not gone to jail yet for nearly murdering somebody in a premeditated way in public. I mean, what is that? So Raja Jackson, according to the newspapers and all the articles, TMZ, LA Times, anybody who wrote about it says he punched his unconscious victims in the face 23 times. Blood and brain matter flying everywhere, which the video doesn't support. And I'm like, where do these news agencies get their news? What is their source? And so you can, when you look at PSYOPs, the way they hit the media is more like a press release. So a press release is a version of the story that has all the essential facts and it's blasted out to all the newspapers, and then they can add their own commentary and ads. But the template is there. Everybody's going to report. MMA fighter knocks the other guy out and hits him 23 times. Nobody went to fact check it. I was the only person in the world, out of 8 billion people, the only person that bothered to slow down the video of Raja Jackson punching Psycho Stu. I'm the only person that did that? That makes no sense. And having done so, I concluded instantly that no, you could not possibly reach 23 punches. That's a joke. But if I was a news reporter and I'm reporting on an attempted murder, I'm going to note, hey, there's a big difference in terms of journalistic integrity and also influencing jury pools between reporting this as the person was punched 23 times versus he was swung at 20 times and maybe 11 connected. But it's hard to tell if he wasn't just stroking the guy's beard and fluffing it. And a lot of people got mad at me. Like, I should beat you up for saying it's not a real fight. Well, sure, punch me like Raja did. I won't mind. No, a lot of wrestling fans got triggered. How dare you call it fake? How about I punch you in the face? Kind of like the Sandy Hookers. The crisis acting people or crisis acting apologists, they'll say, well, what if somebody shoots up your family and tells you it's fake? Maybe I should go do that, huh? Want me to go shoot up your family and tell you it's fake? It's like, dude, I'm just making observations here. Chill. But you know how religious fundamentalists get. They get violent. And mainstream media fundamentalists get violent when you challenge their little myths. Plain Dakota says they like to get their numbers in. They were probably 23. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, the numbers. Because at first they reported 22. Then it went to 23. I like 22 better. Because it kind of, it related to the Derek Chauvin getting 22 years and getting stabbed 22 times. But I didn't write this one. No, really, they should hire better writers. These psyops are pretty terrible these days. But this particular stabbing didn't fit those hallmarks. Like even Jordan Neely. Okay, the subway killing of Jordan Neely. You had the person filming it the whole time. In this case, it was all CCTV. The scariest thing about it is that everyone else was just sitting on their phone looking at TikTok videos while the girl's bleeding out. And the guy's walking around the subway dripping blood. I killed the girl, and he's taking his hoodie off, blood dripping on the floor, and everyone's just sitting around looking at their phones. And so it's good to know that when you get stabbed to death, wherever you are when it happens to you, the people around you are either going to record you and not help you, or they're not going to bother recording you because there's a camera watching already, and they're just going to watch TikTok and wait for the TikTok video. Nobody's going to save you. But that's already known. It's diffusion of responsibility. Plain Dakota says maybe he was 33. Kevin Mooring says, I think these psyops are for more troops to be rolled out everywhere. Yeah, Donald Trump has been putting the troops out, and this makes the case. And he's obviously alluded to this one. But now, do you actually see the knife going in the neck? Let's be purists about this for a minute. Like, let's just go with, it's got to be fake until proven real because of all the surrounding situation. You don't actually see the knife hit the person. So is that enough to rule out that it happened? I looked at it closely because that's what we do, and I didn't see anything to suggest so. And honestly, the dripping blood was one of the more realistic things about it. Like, they never get the blood right. If you remember the Frank James shooting, you had someone walk through with the red trench coat, dropping squibs, dropping the little bags that had to be popped for the blood to come out. Yeah, the story seems sus. Was it filmed with a potato? The film was pretty clear, but they cut it. So somebody's trying to put out a FOIA. Someone needs to do a FOIA. Because, well, I guess. I mean, if it's, maybe they held it back because it would have been too disrespectful to the victim, but it's not hard to find. Realest blood to date. I agree. But again, I don't think this qualifies as an extraordinary claim. So that's kind of the main thing here, is that it's not everything is fake. It's media does engage in fakery routinely, but is this part of it? And again, I tend to think not. But you can see how this adds to the power of the psychological warfare itself. So if there's this psy war going on, narratives are being created. If the thing happens in real life, why wouldn't they jump on it? And then calling out future things looks increasingly distasteful. Yeah, having the BLM poster was a little much, I thought. But you know what I also thought too was, it's awfully quick for us to have a complete composite of the victim in a very sympathetic way. Like, honestly, to me, this is what a well executed psyop would look like. If I was directing psyops, there would be no question of real or fake. I'd be hiring the guy who did Saw or Hostel. What's that guy's name? Roth. The guy who did Hostel, or even Tarantino. You know, they need to really improve their directorship because a lot of these things are just, they fall apart. Kevin Mooring says WWF Theater, he cut his hand. Well, he had a hoodie on. So if I was directing this, I would have a blood bag in the hoodie, and then I would have a tube coming out the arm to the plastic knife with a collapsible blade that I would have purchased at Spirit Superstore. And then I would have stabbed 3 times and squirted the fake blood out, and then walked around, said some crazy stuff. Like, that's how I would have faked it, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if the full footage didn't get out. And even then, it would look real. But the fact, again, that we're 3 weeks after it happened, and we're just now getting the footage, and there's no eyewitnesses, there's no indication here to me that this is a typical psyop or hoax. I'm just saying it's useful. And what does it say about the pundits who jump on this stuff? You know, they love these stories. It's all clicks to them. Kevin Mooring says the people beside him didn't move. Yeah, I'm responding to a very limited clip here. Copaesthetic says possible real event being used for propaganda. Well, exactly. Yeah, and the reason why I think it's worth bringing up here is that it adds to the weight of their existing fake stuff, making it so they're mixing it in a way. Like, for example, if you had some real Adam Lanza do something real and it was like undeniably real and there weren't any of the regular hallmarks of a hoax, if that were to happen, it would be a game changer, because now anybody calling out the fake stuff is looking really bad because they're like, well, this one actually happened. So the assumption is real until proven fake if hoax indicators are not present. And so that's what I would say. This is real unless you can prove it fake. The burden of proof is already established here. Nothing too extraordinary about it. I mean, what would make it extraordinary? I mean, for example, the Frank James shooting up the subway, he was on the internet as the prophet of doom, calling out the mayor. He had 500 subs. It came out just as the Batman movie came out with the Riddler, who took out the mayor and who had his online followers, also about 500. Plain Dakota says, what if they get so good we can't distinguish? Well, I think it's safe to assume that the visuals are going to get that good. So the way you distinguish it is by context, by all the hallmarks of a hoax, the immediate agenda attached to it, all the various things that we tend to see around fake events. Is it instantly blasted on everybody's notifications? And then you work your way back from there. Like the Psycho Stu thing, some would say that Raja Jackson's attack was 100% real. Like, it's undeniable. It just looks real, feels real. But although the people who are saying so haven't looked at the thing slowed down, and they're operating under a suspension of disbelief, because they buy the premise that the body slam knocked him unconscious. And if you accept that, it all makes sense. Oh yeah, he's unconscious. His head's going back and forth because he's getting punched. But what if he's faking the unconsciousness? Well, then he's moving his head left and right really fast to make it look like he's taking a beating. I mean, it's a no-brainer. The guy who did the punching doesn't get arrested. And now we finally get something from Psycho Stu, and it's just a picture of him smiling with half of his teeth out. And it's like, so you took out your denture. I mean, I don't know. I don't buy it. And I would be more inclined to buy into it if it was serious. Like, if it was serious, the news age, like TMZ they'd be doing a slow motion and they'd be talking to doctors and they'd say, okay, what is happening here? Where did that punch hit? What kind of damage? Like, they would be analyzing it, and look, 1 hit, 2 hit, all the way to 23. but nobody went through it in slow motion with the fine-tooth comb. Andrea says, the third assassination attempt barely got any airtime, but the first one people knew about within minutes. I was listening to IPS at the time, by the way. Yeah, one of the major hallmarks of a PSYOP is it's like the thing of the day that everybody's talking about. It's the selectivity. And one of the things about the PSYOP entertainment complex isn't only what they fake, but it's what they focus on. And in other words, what they're ignoring. So they lie by commission, they fabricate an entire worldview, but they also lie by omission, by what they do not acknowledge. And that's as effective as creating a picture as overtly lying. Selectively ignoring things. Now, when the Trump thing happened, we were already talking about it. Like before it even happened, for all the, the people who are new to this, we were expecting the Trump head wound thing. We were watching him, or watching the situation because of all of the surrounding predictive programming, and the majority of it showed up the day of, or the day before. In fact, I have a blog post. It's like my 11 favorite Trump head wound predictive programming examples. And that didn't fully encapsulate it. And there's a lot of room to add to it. And what we have demonstrated here is the metascript, the history that we're living through that's manufactured in front of us, and some of its characters who are portraying roles that have parallels in the entertainment world, plenty of foreshadowing, and oftentimes what's happening in the world with them at that moment is reflected in the movies. Andrea says, I did a deep dive into Minnesota Annunciation school shooting. There's a lot they're not saying in the news. Yeah, well, that shooting 100% is a mirror of the movie Weapons. And, beyond that, the weapon stuff alone, is pretty compelling, the weapons and this, but there are other elements too. Like they've introduced a shooter that the right wing will fear. Right-wingers weren't scared of Nick Cruz, and they see all of these shootings as an attempt to take their guns. So they're naturally defensive, and they don't care about the shootings for that reason. They minimize these things. Like, oh, it's not the guns, it's the SSRIs, which is already a tired old talking point. But they could not get the right wing interested in mass shootings because they love their guns so much. So then you had Vegas, 10/1/2017, Harvest 91, Route 91 Festival. You have that Stephen Paddock shoots a bunch of people from the Mandalay down. He shoots from the 32nd floor. And that event was a country music concert, James Aldean. And if I was at a James Aldean concert and I got shot, I wouldn't be that mad about it. No, I mean, he's not that bad. I'm just saying. Obvious sellout. I think he was also reflected in some Illuminati playing card, by the way. There's some intricacies with the Vegas thing that we were talking about at the time. But the main thing is country music concert. So now you have the right wing being killed by their own precious Second Amendment. And then 13 months after Vegas, 50 of the victims who survived were at a different country music concert, this time in California, in Thousand Oaks, at the Borderline Bar and Grill. And those 50 got shot at by another mass shooter, a mentally ill veteran. Another country music show, they were shot up again. If you believe it. But I'm saying that this was the narrative engineering, where they're trying to make the right wing turn against the Second Amendment because, hey, it's hurting us too. Didn't work. So then they introduced Audrey Hale with the manifesto, shooting a Christian school as a left-wing Redditor who is also espousing non-binary or gender ideology, which to the right was now this is an attack on our Christianity, on our family. It's a progressive attack on traditionalism. So now the right wing suddenly cares. And now every shooter since Audrey Hale has been reflexively misgendered by the right. Because like, it's another trans shooter, it's another trans shooter. So now you have this Annunciation shooter who fits that perfectly, and even praised Audrey Hale and other shooters as well. So they had to kind of reinvent the bad guy. Joe Ross says he parked. No, I'm at a library actually. I was returning some books. Do you remember when I said back when they stole my catalytic converter that had I left a bunch of money like in the book on my dashboard, it would have been fine? It's not exactly true. Somebody did steal a library book from me. Like I literally thought books were safe. I was like, who's gonna steal a book? But no, somebody did steal a library book, and they told me I got to pay $28, which I'm fine with. I'll finish the book. But I'm just surprised. Like, who would steal a book like that? And I'm like, am I supposed to be mad? Because the person has good taste in literature. Like, we could talk about the book. Like, that should be we should be able to, like, have a nice conversation about the book. But no, they're stealing it. Plain Dakota says Route 91 was my favorite PSYOP. Well, you know, if you really want to appreciate the Annunciation school shooting PSYOP, you have to watch Weapons. The number stuff is intense, but also the children who are running out of the house at 217, which all ties into the attempt to ban assault rifles, 217 votes. The children are all running with their arms out, which is kind of strange. Like, with their arms out, like they're crucified, like little victims. And then their feet, if you look at the movie poster, their right foot is up. So the two arms are out, right foot is up. Very unique posture. And in the movie, that's a plot point. Hey, all the children seen on the doorbell cams are running in the exact same way. Well, if you look at the Annunciation school shooting footage or the reportage, the main photo of it, and this is like a photo you'll see in The Guardian and elsewhere, it has a parent who has her shoes off and she's running towards the school. And guess what? She has her arms out and her right bare foot is exposed to the camera. Just like the children running barefoot into the night. Well, what they're trying to say with this last shooter, or with these shooters in general, has been like, so that the caricature of like the racist bowl cut white kid shooting a bunch of people, because like Nick Cruz was a racist Nazi, he had a MAGA hat, that was the whole narrative. That was definitely scary to the left, but if you want to scare the right, what would you do? You'd put an Uzi in the hands of a drag queen and then have them shoot up a Christian school and a bunch of school children. So the story in Weapons is about this red-headed witch who comes into town and basically uses some kind of witchcraft and causes an entire classroom to disappear. The only person who doesn't disappear is her nephew, Alex Lilly. Well, Alex Lilly is obviously a reference to Adam Lanza, who disappeared a classroom. And the shooter was in fact redheaded and very strange, like the witch in the show, this dual personality thing, and also had, among other things, a lot of racial stuff, anti-Semitic stuff, had references to the Order of Nine Angels, which is a neo-Nazi satanic cult that specifically abuses children, according to the literature about it. So there's that thing. Yeah, the redhead witch with the horrible bangs. But so you have the witchcraft, the redhead, the stealing of children, and then here's another point here. This is another thing too. This is actually, on their part, it's genius. So if you watch the Annunciation school shooting, how did you hear about it? Children. They brought out little children to describe the massacre. One kid was describing his friend getting shot on top of him. You know that if a 5-year-old kid sees his friend get shot, like on top of him, he's not going to be on TV smiling half an hour later. Like, I hope we all know that this was not real. So that kid is reading his lines and telling the story. And then another child. So now we're hearing about the Annunciation school shooting from the mouths of children. So then I went and I watched Weapons. And guess what? Weapons is narrated by a child. Movie, narrated by a child. Corresponding psyop, narrated by a child. Same villain. And if you think about it from a child's perspective, they could probably not really conceptualize some rando neo-Nazi satanic trans or maybe not trans psychopath shooting them while they're praying. But they might be able to imagine an evil red-headed witch using some kind of magic to take them away. And then the movie itself is obviously a school shooting allegory. The way that everyone's just kind of like apathetic about it. No one's overreacting. So the movie 100% is correlated with the mass shooting. There's even a scene where there's a giant M15 or AR-15 over the house. This guy has a vision and it has a 217 on it. But yeah, Alex Lilly was definitely Adam Lanza. It's all allegory. Lean Dion says that kid was calmer than a monk. Oh yeah, the kid who was telling the story, he sounded like a kid excited about a summer vacation. Yeah, the rifle over the crib. So they were a little ham-fisted with the gun analogy, the gun control analogy in this movie. But the fact that the movie was a trending movie when the shooting happens underscores my point here. It's always the top movies, the highest grossing films that are reinforcing the psyops. This is a pattern. You know, we talk about this all the time. Like Sinners. Somebody's like, I didn't see Sinners, so how could that influence me? Well, maybe you're not representative of the average mind control victim, because Sinners is the highest grossing horror movie of all time. It's saturated the media ecosystem. And this is a reoccurring theme where you can observe this organically occur. After Tyreek Hill from the Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, was pulled out of his car by cops and mistreated, the comments were all, hey, this just happened in Rebel Ridge. And it did. And there are multiple overlaps. Joe Ross says, how do we explain that? I don't know. Well, the way we explain this is we have to recognize that there's parallel propaganda streams hitting us at all times. Solar and lunar, news and the entertainment. In other words, the stuff appealing to your rational, logical mind and the stuff targeting your dreaming mind, your subconscious, your emotions, your irrational, basically the fantasy. So the fantasy and reality are both hit by the same propaganda source, but one is told through fiction, one is told through news media, and what is effectively, at sometimes you could call it reality TV, when news is being hijacked for fakery. But it's parallel, it's concerted, the timing of it, it's concurrent. So yeah, exactly, Lean Dion. The failed assault weapons ban with 217 votes was alluded to here. So 2:17 a.m., the children disappear. Hey, did anybody find out the age of the guy who died at Burning Man? I'm curious to see if it was another 33-year-old. On the 33rd Burning Man in 2019, a 33-year-old was found dead. That was in 2019, the same year that a 33-year-old set himself on fire, another Burning Man, in front of the White House at the Ellipse, which happened to be 33 years after a previous 33-year-old became a Human Torch at the same spot at the Ellipse. The guy in 2019 was wearing a shirt that said USA when he was burning. TMZ was there to record it. No, I meant to check on the date of the guy who died at Burning Man. So the guy who stabbed the girl in the subway, I checked, he was 34. I've been saying we need to quarantine the 33-year-olds who cut down on a lot of the chaos in the news. What's up, Diana Southard? What's up, Eric Creech? Cope says full moon tonight. Actually, I think the full moon was last night, blood moon. They had Lady Gaga doing the VMA, the Video Music Award, satanic rituals. And you know, it's really not far-fetched to say. I mean, it's not accurate to say it's satanic. She's more Crowley than LaVey. And everything about that song that she performed is Crowley. Abracadabra, the word of the new age, the word of the book of the law. The lady in red reference that she makes at the beginning. Yeah, it's the Scarlet Woman. It's the Whore of Babylon. It's the goddess as idealized by the OTO. But no, it's 100% more magic ceremony. Idol worship, in fact. It's idol worship. You realize that, like, when we talk about the elite, they're not Satan worshipers. Some will say, oh, they worship, what do they worship? Saturn, the sun. Well, in a way, they're more, I would say, maybe not even polytheistic, pantheistic. And they worship in the sense of, they basically do worship, but they worship these gods as personification of natural forces. And, you know, the moon, the sun, masculine, feminine, but they fine-tune it. There's a whole plethora of entities that they worship. But the way they do the worship, it's called the Great Rite in witchcraft, where the priest is the god incarnate. The priestess is the moon, drawing down the moon. So you could look at a performer like Lady Gaga in that capacity as a living vessel of the goddess Babylon that the elite worship. The sun is just part of it. It's sun, it's moon. But the connection between like sun worship and serpents and obelisks, like it's all pretty well established and consistent. Jamarin May, any luck on finding the new headquarters? I did find one. It's on Moon Street. I did find a place that I can likely get into. Now, paying for it, it's going to be a few months, but I did find a place. But I might be getting a little boost. I have a loan I just about paid off, and once I'm through with that, so we'll be once we're in a headquarters, we'll have a scheduled nightly show, open phones. We'll finally be able to start developing this auto hoax wiki and really fleshing it out and creating an audio video counterpart. If you've been watching my videos, I have a series called the IPS Deprogram, a skeptic's guide to the theater of Psywar, and that is going to be a book which will be published here in a few days. But the video is, if you've seen it, I'm using AI tools to create these things. And I plan to do many more. So I'd like to do an IPS breakdown of 9/11 from a Metascript perspective. An IPS breakdown of the Annunciation school shooting from a Metascript perspective. And so what that means is we will be having let's say a 30-minute deep dive into an event where I'll show the event and the corresponding entertainment media content concurrently or previously released, and how these fuse with the story. The sun and the moon, the solar lunar, the real and fake merging, like the eclipse over the monolith in Space Odyssey. And yeah, again, Space Odyssey 2001, Space Odyssey, It's about man's journey to Saturn, if you look at the original story, merging with the monolith, which is your smartphone, which we've already done. We've all merged with it. But space has always been a metaphor for the space between your ears. It's not about outer space. The space program is about programming your inner space. It always has been. And they do this through the movies. They do this through the news. Yeah, I saw Trump posting something on Truth Media, but he also posts QAnon crap. So he throws red meat to the anti-vaxxers. He's like, oh, you guys all have a point. It's like, give me a break. Anti-vaxxers jumped the shark. They fell for the fear porn agenda. Looks like there's a bunch of fire trucks pulling into this lot. Oh no, they're U-turning. Okay. Yeah, look, Donald Trump posts stuff all the time on Truth Social. Sorry, I'm a little distracted here. They're shutting down the road behind me. I think there might be a incident. Yeah, love me again, MAGA. You're right. All the vaxxes were bad. Anti-vax and pro-vax have the same mind virus. Greta has the same mind virus as Dr. Naomi Wolf, major anti-chemtrail crusader who still flies on airplanes. I might take this as a signal to get out of here. They're gonna block this road. All right, we'll be back.